claimed. The other thing we'd like to talk about before we get into the actual tax credits is the option to transfer a tax credit to another taxpayer. Not all tax credits are transferable, but if you do have a transferable tax credit that was awarded to an entity, that entity can sell it. The biggest thing that is new to the tax credit transfer process is that you need to complete all of the sections on the original certificate, including the consideration, which is the amount that was paid for the tax credit, the amount of the sale. The transfer will not be completed if that is not completed. So once you decide to transfer it, you fill out all the information, you send it to IDR. We will issue a replacement certificate back to the transferee within 30 days. You can always provide us the information if you want those transferred certificates sent back to you. We can send it back to you and you can give it. We are very flexible on how to make the transaction easier for you. The transferee, which is the person who has bought the credit, can claim the full credit amount on their tax credit or on their tax return. The amounts received from the sale of tax credits is not taxable income for Iowa tax purposes. And the amount paid for purchasing tax credits is not deductible for Iowa tax purposes. And now I'm going to hand it back to Amy to talk about the business activity income tax credits.
Thanks. So we broke out the tax credits into 4 different groups, and then we'll pass back and forth as we go through them. And the biggest group, what we're going to start here is what we call business activity income tax credits. So this is things that businesses do, and most of them are awarded credits to go to an agency and say, I want to do this, or I have done this, and then there's a possibility that you'll get a tax credit. So we're starting here with the investment tax credit, and you'll note there's the 07 right next to the name of the credit. So Angela mentioned the tax credit code. It's a 2-digit number, and that's the tax credit code for the investment tax credit. On all of the slides going forward, we'll include that tax credit code. We won't call it out anymore, but all that information is there, and it's also in the 148 instructions. The tax credit codes for all of the different tax credits based on the names that we're giving you today will also appear there. So again, that's important information for getting those credit claims. So the investment tax credit is actually a component of an tax credit award program at the Economic Development Authority called the High Quality Jobs Program. The program is established for new and expanding companies who are creating or retaining jobs in Iowa to encourage that investment and the jobs. The credit equals 1 to 10%, 1 up to 10% of the new investment, depending on the total number of jobs that the business has promised to create or retain and the total capital investment. And that's a negotiation that happens with EDA during the award process to figure out the actual amount of that award. Along with the investment tax credit, the High Quality Jobs Program includes direct funding, like forgivable loans or low interest loans. It also can receive sales and use refunds for the on sales and use tax paid during the construction of the facility. This program is capped at $105 million per fiscal year for 2017 through 2021. It was $130 million prior to a legislative change that got passed to help fund a new tax credit that I'll be covering shortly. The credit, the investment tax credit piece, is non-refundable, which, as Angela mentions, means you can't claim any more than your tax liability. This credit is different than all the others in that the total award has to be amortized over 5 years, because this is the only tax credit in Iowa that you can start claiming it before you've actually done the thing you said you were going to do. So you say, I'm going to build a building and I'm going to invest and create these jobs. You've got a 3-year window to do that and then 2 years to maintain it. But you can start claiming those credits from the beginning, depending on your contract with EDA. So it's amortized for 5 years, but then each individual year can be carried forward for up to 7 years. So that's the investment tax credit. Oh, okay. So the research activities tax credit is another large tax credit in the state of Iowa. This is an automatic credit, which means you don't have to go to any agency to say you want to claim it, but the Department of Revenue has a tax credit form for you to complete. There's 2 different ways the credit can be calculated. It can be calculated in the regular method that's been around for since the inception of the credit on the IA-128, but there's also the IA-128S for a more simplified calculation of the credit. And the credit's claimed by companies who are doing research that's technological in nature and would be considered eligible for the federal research credit. Because there's two calculations, there's two different credit rates. The regular calculation is 6.5% of qualified research expenditures, and they're incremental expenditures depending on a base year that was established by the feds. Or the simplified rate is 4.55% because it's a little bit broader eligibility. This credit is refundable, which means regardless of what your tax liability in Iowa, you can get the whole credit returned to you, even if your tax liability is zero. Companies with high quality jobs projects that I just mentioned that are eligible for the investment tax credit, if they also do research, they can be awarded a supplemental research activities tax credit by Economic Development Authority as part of the package. That credit is calculated on the 128 and 128S and shown there on that form, but it has its own tax credit code. So it's important that you claim those separately on the 148 so we can track and determine which part is automatic and which is awarded. And the calculation of the supplemental also differs depending on the size or the gross revenues of the company that's been awarded it. Large companies can get just under 50% increase in their credit. Small companies can have their credit more than double. So the new tax credit that was created in 2016, during the 2016 legislative session, is the Renewable Chemical Production Tax Credit. It's also going to be awarded by the Economic Development Authority. And it's to encourage new or existing companies in Iowa to expand their production of renewable chemicals. So it's only eligible for additional production since April 2016, which is when the credit was originally passed. But the production has to be in production years 2017 through 2026. The credit will equal 5 cents per pound, up to $1 million for new companies, defined as companies that have been in Iowa for 5 or less years, or up to $500,000 for existing companies per year. The companies can receive credits for up to 5 years during the life of the program. This program is capped at $10 million per year, so that's all EDA will be able to award during each of those fiscal years from 2017 through 2026. And 5 years of credits is the same comment that they can get it for up to 5 years. This credit is refundable. So again, it's like the research activity credit in that no Iowa tax liability is required to benefit from it. The next business activity credit has to deal with investment in housing. Again, it's an awarded credit by EDA, and it's for the rehabilitation of existing housing, investment in that, or investment in new housing in housing distressed areas. So those areas that can be shown that they have a housing shortage. The credit is 10% of the investment in the housing project with a maximum credit of $15,000 per unit. So it's try to encourage multi-family units and so apartment complexes and so on. The program is capped at $20 million per fiscal year, and it's been fully subscribed since it was first available in fiscal year 2015. The credit itself is non-refundable with a 5-year carry forward. So if you can't use the liability in that first year, you have 5 additional years against which to apply it. But it is also transferable, and Angela walked through what the transfer credit means. This program is actually already online. EDA set it up through iowagrants.gov. The Redevelopment Tax Credit is our next business activity credit. It is also awarded by EDA. And they have a scoring process for this one. So companies that have come in and want to receive a credit for projects where they're redeveloping brownfield or grayfield sites have to prove to EDA that it's a high quality project, that there's benefits to the state to have it done, that they're ready to go, and there's other things that are scored throughout the process. So it's because it's often oversubscribed, and so then they pick the projects with the highest score to award to every year. The credit equals between 12 and 30% of qualified expenditures for the redevelopment of these sites. And so brownfield site is a site that's contaminated, maybe like an abandoned gas station. A grayfield site is a site that's underutilized, maybe an abandoned parking lot or just an empty parking lot. The credit is capped program-wide at $10 million per fiscal year. It's non-refundable with a 5-year carry forward, but it's also transferable. recently the program was changed that for nonprofits applying for the program, they can just receive a refundable credit because nonprofits don't have tax liability in Iowa, and this way they can just use the credit themselves. This is one of our programs that is in the Cactus system, and so all of the application and the scoring and all of the awarding all works through the Cactus system online. Our next credit is the Historic Preservation and Cultural and Entertainment District Tax Credit. This program, again, you'll see there's a lot of repetitiveness here. The Economic Development Authority also awards this program, but this is a change. It used to be the Department of Cultural Affairs that was the lead agency on this. EDA now works with the State Historic Preservation Office of Iowa at DCA to administer this program. Again, this one also has a scoring process, and so applicants that are trying to get credit awards have to show their readiness and the value to the state of doing the project. And the credit is awarded for the rehabilitation of historic buildings in Iowa. And it equals 25% of the qualified rehabilitation expenditures that will be incurred during the project. The overall program is capped at $45 million per fiscal year. This credit is refundable and transferable. So entities that, they either have the option of just claiming a refund or they can transfer it to another entity. And this is another one of the credits that has an application process that's completely handled within the Cactus online system. Our final business activity credit is the New Jobs Tax Credit. This is an automatic credit which is claimed on the form IA-133. And this form, it used to be a form, it got changed to a worksheet, but back in Tax Year 2015, we changed it back into a form and expanded it quite extensively to try and better track the information to show eligibility and just how this credit is working. It's a credit for businesses who are creating jobs under an active job training contract with the community college or the 260E program. That's a withholding tax credit program that I'll get to a little bit later, but businesses that have one of these agreements with a community college, if they can show that they've increased the jobs at the business site for which that contract was signed by 10% or more, for jobs that were directly related to that job training, then they are eligible to just claim this credit on their tax return. It's a one-time credit per job of 6% of up to a wage threshold. And for 2016, that wage threshold is $28,300. It's linked to the unemployment insurance program. The New Jobs Tax Credit, although it is automatic, we do require a certificate number be included, and that is the certificate number that was awarded under the 260E program. So there's a link there between those two credits that we're trying to track to help verify. One thing to note with, and it's non-refundable with a 10-year carry forward. Excuse me, I missed my last bullet there. Okay, so the credits, a lot of these credits that I just went through are businesses that are doing investment in structures in the state of Iowa. And so obviously with property like that, business would be interested in depreciating that property. But it's important to note for the Redevelopment Tax Credit, the Workforce Housing Investment Credit, and the Historic Preservation Credit, the basis that you can depreciate has to be reduced by the amount of credits claimed. So you can't both get a credit and depreciate the value of that credit. You have to reduce your basis, which makes just an important point to note with those credits. All right, now I'll turn it to Angela.
The next credits I'm going to discuss are charitable tax credits. The first one is the Endow Iowa Tax Credit. This is awarded by EDA. It is for donors who make endowment gifts to a qualified community foundation. The amount of the credit is equal to 25% of the donation, and the program is capped at $6 million per calendar year. There is a maximum of $300,000 per taxpayer per year. The credit is non-refundable with a 5-year carry forward. The next tax credit is the School Tuition Organization Tax Credit. This is awarded by STOs that Amy had mentioned earlier. They are not actually affiliated with the state, but they have been certified as participating entities. And they fund tuition grants for eligible students to attend non-public schools. The amount of the tax credit is equal to 65% of your cash or non-cash contribution that's made to an STO. The program is capped at $12 million per calendar year, and corporate awards are limited to each STO's 25% of the cap. And that is just to make sure that the corporate taxpayers are not funding all of the change, or don't take up all of the tax credits. The credit is non-refundable with a 5-year carry forward. The next credit is a farm to food donation tax credit. This one is relatively new. It is awarded by the Department of Revenue in partnership with food banks, excuse me, for producers of food who donate to an Iowa food bank or Iowa Emergency Feeding Organization. The amount of the tax credit is equal to 15% of the value of donated food, and you must have an official receipt to submit to the Department of Revenue. Those receipts are issued by the food banks. There is a list of qualified food banks on our website, and not all food banks participate. So if this is something that you're interested in, you want to make sure that you're taking your goods to a qualified food bank. The tax credit is capped at $5,000 per taxpayer per year. It is non-refundable with a 5-year carry forward. The next credit is a charitable conservation contribution tax credit. It's an automatic tax credit. In order to claim the credit, you must include your federal Form 8283 in your first year of the claim. The amount of the credit is equal to 50% of the fair market value of real property in Iowa, which is conveyed to a qualified conservation organization. And so the donations are for it has to be for conservation purposes. The tax credit is capped at $100,000 per year per taxpayer. And it is also non-refundable, but has a 20-year carry forward. With regards to these charitable contribution tax credits, you are not allowed to double dip. So if you receive an Iowa tax credit, you cannot claim it as an Iowa itemized deduction for charitable donation. However, you are still eligible to claim it as a charitable contribution on your federal tax forms. And now I will go back to Amy.
So the state of Iowa has a handful of tax credits that are encouraging renewable energy. The first set is for retailers of biofuels. So the ethanol promotion tax credit is an automatic credit. So to claim it, you must complete an IA-137. So it's for gas stations who sell ethanol blended fuel, where their biofuel sales exceeds the biofuel threshold percentage. And this is set out in statute as to what these percentages are, and they are rising over time to try and encourage more biofuel sales to eventually hit 25% in 2020. And the thresholds are set separately for large retailers. That's companies that have gas stations that sell 200,000 gallons or more in a given their tax year. They face higher thresholds than the smaller retailers. The credit rate varies from as high as 8 cents per gallon of pure ethanol sold. That's if you meet the threshold. If you're slightly below the threshold, you can get 6 cents. If you're up to 4% or under 4 percentage points below the threshold, you can get 4 cents. And so the IA-137 is one of our most complex forms, and it walks you through how to calculate your pure ethanol gallons sold. So if you're selling E10 or E85 or E15 or E20 or E30, that share that's ethanol gets added up and goes towards calculating this credit. It is a refundable credit and is set to expire January 1, 2021. The state also offers a credit for sales of every gallon of E85. So this is also an automatic credit, is claimed on the IA-135 for gas stations who are selling any E85 gasoline. It equals 16 cents for each gallon sold, and E85 is defined in the code as any blend with 70% or higher of ethanol. It's a refundable credit, and it was just recently extended through January 1, 2025. The state in 2012, I believe, added the E15 plus gasoline. So we're targeting, E85, but then we're trying to also break that blend wall. So by encouraging sales of E15 plus, it's an automatic credit and it's claimed on the IA-138. And so gas stations that sell E15 up to E69, any gallon of those blends is eligible for the credit. The credit is 3 cents per gallon. However, during the summer months, it rises to 10 cents per gallon. So that's June 1 through September 15. That's when EPA rules for selling E15 blends are a little bit tighter, and so it's a higher subsidy during those months of sale. This is also a refundable credit and was just extended through January 1, 2025. 3 different credits for ethanol, but biodiesel is also something that the state wants to encourage sales of. So we have the biodiesel blended fuel tax credit, also an automatic credit. It's claimed on the 8864, and it's for gas stations that are selling biodiesel blends of B5 or higher. So that's 5% biodiesel or up to B100. Currently, the credit equals 4.5 cents per gallon for B5 or higher through the 2017 calendar year. In 2018, the credit will change. This was something that just got passed during the last legislative session. Sales of B5 to B10, the credit will fall to 3.5 cents per gallon. But for sales of B11 or higher, the credit will increase slightly to 5.5 cents per gallon. So that change will be coming up in a few years. This credit is also refundable and was extended through January 1, 2025. So those 4 credits are all for the sale of biofuel by gas stations. The state also offers credits for wind projects or biomass or methane cogeneration or solar that have been approved by the Utilities Board, and to encourage the production of renewable energy. The credit, once you get approved as an eligible facility and you're operational and then selling or consuming on-site electricity or heat with one of those kind of approved methods, then you go back to the Utilities Board, and together between the Utilities Board and the Department of Revenue, the application and award process occurs. Once you get approved, you are eligible to claim credits for up to 10 years. The wind energy production tax credit is actually fully subscribed and has been, there's no more capacity for other facilities to get on, but the renewable energy tax credit still has capacity, and additional facilities could be approved for that. So you need to consult the Utilities Board website and they have more information. This credit is non-refundable with a 7-year carry forward, and both credits, I should say, both credits are non-refundable with a 7-year carry forward, and both are transferable. However, the renewable energy tax credit can only be transferred once. These credits are currently being built within the Cactus system, and so awards that are applied for in the 2016 production year, beginning in 2017, it will be an online system using through Cactus, and the Utilities Board will be reaching out to applicants very soon with more information about that change. The last energy credit is for actually installation costs. It's the Solar Energy System Tax Credit. It's awarded by the Department of Revenue, and it's for the installation of solar energy systems on your home or business. In this case, we'll focus on the business side because that's what we're focusing on today, but it equals 50% of the federal solar energy credit for a cost of installation, and the federal credit currently is a 30% credit, so that makes the Iowa credit effectively a 15% credit of installation costs. So together the two would cover 45% of costs. However, the Iowa credit is capped on a taxpayer basis at $20,000 for a business for any given installation. And the overall program is also capped at $5 million per year for 2015 and later. And because this piggybacks on a federal credit, the federal credit is only set to run through, as a complete credit, through 2022, well, actually, through the end of 2021. Then it will fall to a very small credit for businesses. So the Iowa credit will probably continue, but it will be very small. So the credit, once awarded, is non-refundable with a 10-year carry forward, and this also has an application process through Cactus so that the whole application is all online. Angela.
All right, so now we finish up here with just, well, I guess not quite finish up, but with some miscellaneous kind of hodgepodge tax credits. The first is the Venture Capital Tax Credit for qualifying business. It's awarded by EDA, and it is for investors in Iowa startup businesses who are registered with EDA. The amount of the tax credit is equal to 25% of the investment in the qualifying business up to $500,000. There is a $2 million cap per fiscal year and a $100,000 annual taxpayer cap. The tax credit is refundable for individuals and non-refundable with a 3-year carry forward for other tax types. The Innovation Fund tax credit is also awarded by EDA, and it is for investors in certified innovation funds, which target early stage Iowa businesses. This credit is also equal to 25% of the investment in the innovation fund, but has an $8 million cap per fiscal year. It is non-refundable with a 5-year carry forward, but is also transferable. The other credit we have is the Agricultural Assets Transfer Tax Credit. It is awarded by the Iowa Finance Authority under the Beginning Farmer Tax Credit Program. For an established farmer who signs a 2 to 5 year lease agreement to a beginning farmer, and that's based on assets, not necessarily age or something else. The amount of the credit is equal to 7% of cash rent or 17% of crop share value. That amount increases by 1% in the first year if the beginning farmer is a veteran. The program is capped at $12 million per year through 2017, of which $8 million of that is designated to ag assets. The tax credit is non-refundable with a 10-year carry forward. And you do get that credit for multiple years as the lease agreement continues. Along those same lines of the Beginning Farmer Tax Credit Program is the Custom Farming Contract Tax Credit. This is also awarded by IFA, and the credit is for hiring contract services from a beginning farmer for up to 24 months. The amount of the credit is 7% of the contract value and 8% in the first year if the beginning farmer is a veteran. This takes up the remaining $4 million of the $12 million per year cap. The tax credit is non-refundable with a 10-year carry forward. It does expire on January 1 of 2018.
Okay, so that covers all of the income tax credits that we wanted to cover today about businesses. And so now we're just going to touch on the withholding tax credits that the state offers. The first is the 260E new job training tax credit. So I mentioned that earlier as being associated with the new job income tax credit, but this is an actual, the awarded piece where a business receives incentives to invest in job training through an agreement with a community college. So the business and the community college work together, come to an agreement for training the employees of the business, and the business will pay the community college to help cover that training, but in return, the business can claim 1.5% of wages that are paid to those employees covered by the agreement as a credit against their withholding taxes paid to the state. And so therefore the state essentially covers the cost of what the business pays to the community college. It's just a diversion of that withholding to the community college. If the business, for the employees that are being trained, if they surpass certain wage thresholds that are established in the code or by EDA, then they can receive a supplemental credit of an additional 1.5% of wages. So the total credit could equal 3%. But those are considered two credits on the return. There's the new jobs credit and the supplemental new jobs credit. Payments, the key thing about this program is the payments must be made to the college before claims can be filed on a withholding return, as required by the statute. The next withholding tax credit is the Accelerated Career Education Tax Credit, or also known as 260G, so another section of the Iowa Code. This supports technical training agreements between community colleges and businesses for a period of up to 5 years. So here the business isn't actually training their direct employees, but instead they're sponsoring program seats within a program at the community college. They help design the program. They cover 20% of the costs with cash or in-kind, maybe equipment or machinery or something if it's like a welding or kind of a training program that requires equipment. And then they agree that if they sponsor enough seats, they have to agree to consider hiring the graduates of that program upon their completion, of the successful completion of the program. In return for doing all those things, the company then can claim a withholding credit, an ACE credit, equal to 10% of the hiring wage that they would pay to a graduate of the training program times the number of sponsored seats. This program is actually capped by the legislature at $5.4 million per fiscal year. So the EDA administers that cap. All the contracts have to be sent to EDA, and then they send out notification whether the contract was approved and for what amount. Each year they send those out. The final withholding tax credit program has nothing to do with job training. This is instead the Targeted Jobs Tax Credit, and it was created as a pilot project to encourage or help our border cities compete for businesses. And so an agreement is entered into between the business and EDA and the participating city to receive up to 10 years of incentives to encourage those businesses to locate or expand in these certain Iowa border cities. So right now, under the program, there's only 5 cities that are eligible: Council Bluffs and Sioux City on the western border of the state, Burlington, Keokuk, and Fort Madison on our eastern border. And the credit equals 3% of the wages paid to the employees covered in the agreement. And so those employees, you can start out with a smaller number and grow throughout the contract, and then the credits can grow over time. And each contract now has a kind of a maximum total credit that can be claimed over that 10-year period as well. So we showed you the 148 and the important things for claiming that, and so now we just have a few screens to walk you through the important key notes for claiming the withholding tax credits. So you'll go to our e-file and pay system, select the tax period for either the quarterly or the annual withholding return that you want to claim. If you're eligible to claim one of these tax credits, the next screen you should see would be the tax credit claim screen. If no screen appears and you believe that you're eligible to claim a withholding tax credit, you need to contact the department. Zhang Jin at the department is the one who oversees that database, and his number is in the PowerPoint, which he loves when I hand that out. But we want to obviously help you get those credits if you're eligible to claim them. So do feel free to call him if something doesn't appear correct. The screen that contains the tax credit type. So I mentioned 4 withholding credit types: the new jobs, the supplemental new jobs, the ACE, or the targeted jobs, and the certificate number, which was assigned to the contract that the business has. So you'll see a screen like this next one. There's a place for you to enter the amount of tax credits that you're claiming for that certificate number for that tax period. Once you've entered all of the individual tax credit amounts you want to claim, you click Calculate, and then the subtotals and the total credits will be calculated automatically once you click that button. If it all looks good, then you click Continue. Work your way through the rest of the withholding return, completing all the other information that the department requires. And at the end, or near the end, you should come up to the confirmation page. It's important that you print this page because it needs to be sent to the community college or the pilot city, particularly the 260E and the ACE programs. As part of the verification of those systems, the community college has to see what you claimed with the department so they can compare that to what the payment they received. Not all the pilot cities may require that to be sent to them, but it's important that you keep it in case they do at some point ask for that information as we do reconciliation. And that's withholding credits.
So if you have further questions about any of these tax credits or any of the individual income tax credits, you can actually find most of your answers in the Tax Credit Users Manual, which is posted to our website. It has a pretty in-depth description of each and every tax credit. I can't hardly think of any information that it doesn't provide. And it's not nearly as complicated as reading through code. So I think that is probably one of the best resources as far as tax credits. However, we do have some other resources available on the Iowa Department of Revenue website. The first of these resources is the Iowa Tax Research Library, which you can get to from our homepage. We also just have our website, and you'll see where it's circled that you can subscribe to updates. If you click on that link, you'll be able to go into this page, which will allow you to receive automatic updates, and you can pick your topics, either newsroom, tax information, information about e-file and pay. You can sign up for due date reminders. You can get economic, fiscal, and statistical information, which is the stuff that would generally, I think, come from our area, as well as electronic filing information. And these updates do replace the e-lists that the department used prior to this new system. You can also follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook. So the purpose of this presentation was intended for general education purposes only. Anyone involved in an audit or protest must contact the department representative they are working with on that issue. And at this time, we will open it up for any questions that anybody may have.
Thanks. Great information today. Appreciate it. Do you have any questions from our audience? Copies of the presentation. A hard copy, or I don't think we'll be providing hard copies, but you can get a link to the presentation. I don't know, Patrick, maybe you can help us out with that one. I like to just throw him under the bus.
Yeah.
There's the link that he just sent out, I believe.
All right, great. Thanks, Patrick. Any other questions from today?
One thing that I forgot to mention on the withholding is if you as a business don't go on to e-file and pay and file it yourself, but instead you have a vendor assist you, please ask that vendor to print the confirmation page for you, or if they do bulk filing, they might not be able to get to it, but then you can get a separate login from the Department of Revenue to go in after your return's been filed and get through to that confirmation page so you can print it out and make sure you meet that obligation. So if I was on an e-list, do I need to request those that replace the e-list?
Yes.
I have to go back in.
You'll have to go back in and indicate which services you would like to receive updates on.
All right, thanks, Vince. You too. Any other questions for anybody, for our panel here today?
So either we answered everything or we just overwhelmed you and you can't.
All right, well, have a good rest of your lunch hour, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And if you do have questions, do you want to maybe give a phone number or a way to contact your department quick, or is that included in the PowerPoint?
They could just send an email to our general taxpayer services inbox, which is, I've drawn a blank on what that is.
IDR, IDR at iowa.gov, or is that it? Or
Yes, that is it, idr@iowa.gov.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
I got stage fright.
Are there any more update classes this year? Do we have any more webinars coming up, Greg?
We do. We have a webinar in November on the capital gain deduction and the Iowa 100 form. And then in December, we have one on the new requirement for electronic filing of W-2s and 1099.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate your time today. And
can we now print out the expanded Iowa instructions?
We do not have a PDF version of the expanded instructions online as we did a few years ago. So it's not real printer friendly, I'll admit, but you can print out each page if you so choose.
all right, thanks, Greg. That looks like it. So we'll wrap things up. Thank everyone for their time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much for attending.
Overwhelmed. Me too. All right.
Thank you.
There, I'll leave it up to you guys.